he says, I'm going to electrical engineering. Okay, fine. You have nothing against it. He almost winks his eye that you have not. No. Do whatever you want. So he goes to the dean and he says he wants to transfer himself into electrical engineering. Dean says, Chuck, we are having this coming Monday, beginning Monday, we are having this checkup examination for past course. And so you could come after Christmas into next semester.
Yeah.
So he talks the dean somehow. I don't know what the reason was, but of course Dean did not know that I was his father. I knew the Dean in a way because his wife, I knew.
Yeah.
They lived just 15th, what's this street there? So he coaxed Dean to give him what they passed notes to acquaint himself
Try,
with,
yeah,
to try.
if he could make it.
Right.
So he,
Wasn't gonna get
after 2 weeks or a week, 1 week's time, night and day, he studied, apparently anyway. So he goes there and thanks him, and okay, he says, did you like, Mr. Milner, do you like this course? He says, call, try to check me, see what. So he starts quizzing him here and there. He says, Mr. Milner, you could come after Christmas, you are accepted. So he went, took electrical engineering until spring. Spring come, he comes home, I'm going to Japan. I'm going to Japan, how? I'll find my way. He found his way to get into Yale without our help. He got himself scholarship there. And so now he wants to go, so he goes to comes to California here, works in the library in what's that there? Not here, not this, on the southern part.
Yeah, UCLA.
That was either UCLA or city of
USC.
Berkeley.
Berkeley, yeah.
Okay, that's
In
right.
in library, and then gets painting jobs, including his roommates at Yale. Parents hired him to paint fences there or house, I don't know. And he made himself enough to go to Japan, and he went to Japan.
That's how you got the interest in Japan.
He comes back from Japan. We meet him at the airport there, and he says, "You know, Dad, I'm gonna. Petaluma has no garbage."
Not at the airport, we already went to the blocks, and that was when we were gonna Mary's that party, and
Mama,
he says,
Mama,
wait a minute,
why
wait
do
a
you
minute.
interfere? This
No,
happened.
because.
You were crying at the airport.
Not at the
At
airport.
the airport.
No.
Yes, ma'am.
We were at the motel.
No, ma'am. You were crying at the airport. He
No
explained,
way.
and I says,
He
"No,
was
Chuck."
going through the newspaper with George. They were sitting at the table, looking through all the ads, and that's when Chuck found an ad that they have no garbage man in Petaluma.
He
Not
already-
Petaluma, Sebastopol. And that's when he sprung it on us and said, I
Is-
think I'm going into that
Is
business.
men at the time right?
There's big money in garbage now.
Huh?
There's big money in garbage.
Right.
Oh, sure, because
right.
it's all in the
And the
hands
ironic part was,
of,
when he was very young,
Mhm.
and he was going to school, he was brilliant. He was ahead of all the kids. And the nuns used to say, you know, he's going to be a brilliant boy. And all the kids hated him like a nerd, you know, because he was always way above them.
when
And
they
I
ask
went in, I'm talking. And when the mothers, you know, I belong to all the mothers clubs and everything, they'd say to me, oh, Chuck is going to be something when he grows up. He's so brilliant. And I, very out of a clear sky, would say, oh, sure, he's probably going to be a garbage man. When he ever broke this, I was heartbroken. He wasn't
that's why
gonna
she
go back
started
to
crying
Yale.
when he said
Yeah,
that
I think that was my first heart attack.
nuns that he went to school there, they question, what are you gonna be? What are you gonna be? I'm doing this and that, and then come to Chuck, what are you gonna be? He says, I'm gonna be Pope.
Yeah, it's going to be the book.
You ain't go messing around. Go for the big one.
None reports to Helen. Now he's coming, he's gonna be garbage collector, not a Pope.
And I would explain to the women, oh, sure, you know, these brilliant ones end up to be a garbage man. But that was the night that we went to Mary's, Nishimura's.
Okay.
And we walk in, and of course I was distraught. I couldn't even take it. I think that was the first time my heart went kaput. And Mary's mother said to me, I am heart sick today. And I said, what's the matter? She said, my son is leaving college,
Arthur, yeah.
and he won't go. So then I said to her, well, we're both having the same trouble. I said, we just got the promise from our son that he would go back.
Exactly, I said.
Yeah.
First, you finish Yale, then you do whatever you want. But unless you finish Yale, you'll fail to be my son. You got into there, that's a very prestigious institution, and so they have no problem there. They began to lend him money, but that was federal government's money. But the first thing, when he finished, when he got a job working for Toyota
Yeah.
Corporation in New York,
After Yale,
yeah,
Yeah.
the first thing he came home with saved money, gave it to me, and asked me to go and pay up all his debts to the government through Yale. He had borrowed money.
Yeah, he paid his debts. Well, now, shall I get to my livelihood?
Sure.
It's not important.
Your livelihood? What's that?
Dominus for this reason, it's not important. So I won't say anything.
No,
No.
our important life is
Not ours.
two
No,
together.
I
Two
didn't
together.
I didn't have a life before you.
Well, I don't know. I picked you up. I don't know where. Where did you? Do you remember where you said I will? I asked if she marries me. You know, she was going in the
Under
hot
the
train is leaving
Times
soon.
Square
Times Square
Bridge.
under the
That's where you proposed, Times Square Bridge?
yeah, right, in a car.
Under the
In
Times
a
Square
car,
Bridge.
Yeah. And she had about 15 minutes to run into the.
To get my train back to Boston.
And you said yes then, or you had to think about it?
No, I said yes. I knew he was going to ask, so.
Oh, you was all,
She was prepared.
I was ready.
all prepared. You prepared with your answers, so it was all from out. Yeah.
And then, of course, I had to come back to New York and pick up my diamond. And I picked out a little scrawny one, and then when he brought it, it was about 18 times the size I picked out.
Ah, there you go.
So,
Yeah. But you mentioned Chuck, what about Sandy and Ginny? You didn't talk about them at all.
Well, we had.
well, he just talks about himself.
It's this way.
And mine is not worth anything.
It's
I
this
mean, you had
way.
to work at them to get them off the truck.
Yeah.
Sandy and Ginny, we had less trouble because they were somehow, for some reasons, of course, I had very little to do with bringing up our children because usually in older days, men
Yeah.
had to bring the bread home and the mother was the boss.
In the meantime, mother was also working.
Right, also working, yeah, in
Yeah.
the.
Well, now that was much later.
Not much later, I
Yeah.
worked in the store before we even had
Yeah,
children.
the girls already were in college. I was Marcus College.
When? When I started to work,
Yeah.
you were silly.
Oh, no.
The kids were small and they used to come to the store and then I used to bring them home. Ask Ginny, she'll tell you. The kids were small and Chuck used to walk up from grammar school. Ginny used to walk up from high school and I'd take them home.
When other people were complaining or somehow, asking for sympathy and their children, bringing up children in the area there, it's a very conglomerate situation, more like, I don't know. Yale was the biggest taxpayer, or so to say, including a population, so, and their influence in many ways was apart. Then there were minorities, very strong minorities, like Italian minorities. So under those circumstances, the children was not very easy to bring up the way you think they should be brought up. But Sandy and Ginny, we had no problem. We had no problem.
Oh, yes, we did. We had as much problems.
Well,
Should have.
all right, so let's say I didn't know those problems, yeah.
You didn't know the problems.
Yeah.
I used to cover the trail a bit,
never had any problem with the
Wait a
school.
minute, wait, hold on a minute.
Hmm.
When they'd want to go on a date or something, he was so stern about that. It said, where's he from? Who is he? What car is he gonna take you in? What hour are you gonna be home? So I had to pave the way. The girls would tell me,
Yeah,
pave the
okay.
way. So I paved the way and then tell them, well, he's a nice boy, and so forth and so on. Make it a little easier.
That's true, she's telling the truth. And on this particular point, she's telling the truth.
But that would never caused us any big problems. Ginny was the funny one.
Yeah, Ginny was funny.
She was the funny one. If she had an argument with me, she was the note writer.
She was a note writer, so she had an argument with you, and she'd
She
write
would
down
write the note,
her
leave it
point
for
of
me
view. Yeah.
for the morning. I'd write it, I'd read it, and then I would write my note. Then she would disregard my note and write me a note.
On the same
Finally
piece
say,
of paper.
This is final. Not the same piece of paper, but she was the note writer. Sandy was a little stubborn. She was a little stubborn one, if she did something, she would just stand there and defy me, but
Oh,
she
okay.
was okay.
Well, what things she defied on? On everything? Everything. Yeah.
She told me
Kids.
black was white, she would say, I say it's white.
Did she really surprise you when you got off the airplane that time and said, hi, this is George? my
Well, that was the
fiancé?"
funniest thing, because she called.
George didn't know about this either at the time, right? You're here.
No, she called,
Yeah.
and she said, Mom, I want you to come out. And I said, why? Well, I need you, you have to come out. I never went on the plane, I dreaded it.
Yeah.
And Charles says, if she needs you, then there must be something, you have to go.
Yeah.
So I put tongue in cheek, never flown before. And when we flew, it was like, boom,
Yeah.
all the way. And I thought, well, that's the way a plane goes. I didn't know there was a smooth ride. I got off the plane, she said, hi, Mom, I'm getting married. Almost died.
And George didn't know this either.
No, George and Sandy were together. But he said, why didn't you tell me before?
Yeah, he said, you told your mother we're getting married, why didn't you tell me? So, however, that's the way it started, and that was the very bad year in New Haven when they were smashing windows
Oh, right.
and everything. So,
When was that, 16? No, not 16.
I think
she's gonna be married 25 years in 2 years.
The 67.
Okay, right.
So, anyway, his folks, then he told his folks, and that's how I met them. We went to their house, and George had already told them that they're gonna get married, but they were on their way to Europe. Well, it meant that if she was gonna be married in Connecticut,
They
that
wanted
meant
that.
they would have to come back from Europe and then go back. Well, they talked it over, and they said, well, how about if they get married before we go to Europe? And I thought, oh, mother of God, I
That's
don't
right.
even know this fella,
Yeah.
But anyway, I went along with it, and I said, well, Daddy will never come. Sandy says, well, I won't get married unless Daddy comes. I says, he won't come. I'm telling you, I can guarantee. So George says, well, I'll go to New Haven.
Drive you.
Driving you, and we'll pick up your Daddy, and then we'll come back. And I said, oh my God, that's ridiculous, of course not. So then Sandy decides that she has to have Ginny. Ginny has to be the maid of honor, and she has to have Chuck. That means all three of them have to come. I said, no way. They won't come. Well, anyway, I said, if you call Daddy and he says he'll come, I'll eat my shirt. She calls this one.
She didn't eat
I
that
called
shirt
him
yet.
first. And I said, well, Sandy's gonna get married, and I described the man and everything, and then Sandy comes on and she said, Daddy says he's coming. I said, oh my God, yes, I have to eat my shirt.
I bought
And then-
the plywood, sheet plywood,
Yeah.
boarded up the
boarded
windows,
stores.
all
Oh, New Haven.
in the
okay.
front, yeah. In the system.
And the grocery store was closed, but the girls in the laundromat worked. But that too was all boarded up and everything, but they worked and opened and closed it, but that was the funniest thing. And Ginny at that time didn't have the money to come, so Sandy footed the money for Ginny's trip, and we paid for Chuck to come.
She had this ear problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
terribly involved.
So you drove all the way back across the country?
Sandy wanted us to take her.
Camangia, the little
No,
girl.
not Camangia, no, that's, what's the name, very small, two-seater, open car.
Camangia.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Camangia.
Mama, don't argue.
Jenny!
I showed you.
Jenny!
Hey, Jenny!
Jenny, tell your mama.
It's a little Volkswagen?
No.
No.
Yeah,
Daddy, don't guess it was a
please,
Camangia.
will you find the
Wait a
chance
minute.
to
Don't
stop,
say,
okay?
don't say anything and see what Jimmy says.
Yeah, I don't care what she says either,
Oh, come on.
because I know,
See how stubborn he
I
is?
know
He
the
said
name
it.
of the
This
car.
is Sandy's car?
You
Sandy's
got it.
Sandy's car.
Yeah, this is
That's
our
okay.
idea. Jeannie talks to it all the
No,
time.
that was in New Haven we had. This is going on now after New Haven time.
Oh.
This is when Sandy got married. She had a car, and George had a car. George had a Pontiac.
Oh, boy, was that a car.
Yeah, so they practically gave me for nothing. I paid what, $1,700 because we had to go by,
Oh, okay. Well, tell her I'll be there today.
So,
But anyway, whatever car it was.
That's-
whatever.
You
Just
drove
not-
across
but
the
we
country.
took, we
not Camangia.
bought the big car, that shift thing. God, put your foot down on the, you know,
Frankie.
really go down like this and you still couldn't get it to go down.
Pussy. Tell me about what you were raised in Boston. Your dad died when you were young or something like that?
6 years old.
When you were 6. No, my dad died when I was 5. But so your mom worked.
Now you keep quiet a minute, okay? Just keep quiet.
Okay,
What?
this is your turn.
Don't touch me. This machine
This
is
is your
recording
turn.
Then
everything.
get out of here. I don't care.
But what, you were raised in Boston by your mom who was
My mom.
working?
Well, my mom came from, well, my dad came from, they both were married in Lithuania.
Okay.
And my mom was 16 years old when she got married.
Mm.
And it was a prearranged marriage. It was not a love marriage, it was a prearranged marriage by
Oh, okay.
parents and this, Pidgely, how do you call it?
Matchmaker.
Matchmakers. And my mother at that time told me, she said she didn't even want to get married, but they said, oh, the beer is made, you know.
Beer is made.
Yeah.
Beer, and the food is made, you got to get married. So she was 16 when she got married, and after that, she had Mary about a year later. She had 17.
That's your sister
My
Mary.
sister Mary.
Okay.
She was born in Lithuania.
Mary Martin?
No, Mary Bedell.
Mary Bedell, that's it. Okay.
She was born in Lithuania a year after my mother was married with my father. Then my father came to America and left my mother there.
There.
And my mother was a seamstress, and she used to make dresses, and that's how she had a very good living then because she didn't get paid in money, but she would get a chicken or a loaf of bread or eggs, and she was, well kept. And she could sew for herself, she had no problem. But then my dad wanted her to come. He worked in the woods also as a, what do you call it,
Lumberjack.
lumberjack.
Yeah.
But he invited my mother to come, and we lived on Silver Street,
Boston.
one of those coal flats you call, this,
Cold water pots.
yeah, coal water.
No hot water.
No hot water.
Yeah.
And she came there and she was so disappointed. She hated it at first. But then they were going to make enough money to go back to Lithuania. And then, of course, my brother was born. But they still were going to go back to Lithuania. And then when I came along, they decided, well,
Enough of the beers. She's
yeah, I
back.
can't go back now, not with 3 kids. And then, I was about 6 then. And in the meantime, they had bought a house on Old Harbor Street, which was it was a nice section. We lived
Old
way
Harbor.
up on the hill, Old Harbor.
The whole old harbor.
And it was a nice section of South
Yeah.
Boston.
Right across the street from County Hospital.
Yeah, it was a big hospital with the French nuns, with those great big white
Oh,
hats.
okay.
And my dad died, and he was a used to fix the top of trains.
Yeah.
And he fell. The
Fell,
ladder-
got
The
killed.
ladder slipped and broke his neck.
He broke his neck off a train.
And that's when he died. And then my mother went to work right the next day after the funeral.
Yeah, had to.
And she worked in a sweatshop, I call it. It was so full of smoke that you couldn't see yourself. And she worked there right up until the time I was married. And that's how she got the lung cancer, was from the smoke.
In the sweatshop of the.
Well, there were about 6 ladies that worked there and about 6 men. And they smoked, like when I used to go up to meet her,
Smoke
cigars, cigarettes, I'd have to go like this because you couldn't even see for the smoke.
These are the ladies who smoke cigars? No.
No, the men, there were
Men.
6 men.
Oh, okay.
And my mother, there was a big iron board here where they ironed the coats. She made heavy winter coats. And she used to sew on the fur collars and do all the hand embroidery. They used to have all these hand embroideries on the back, and she used to lug these bundles home from work, get home at 8 o'clock, and lug these bundles home to embroider until about 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And then she'd get up and lug this bundle back. But this went on for years, and she did that for years because she felt that she was a good seamstress.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't have, Helen, mommy didn't have good supervision. She grew, that's why she grew up so wild.
Yeah, so who raised you?
My
How old was you when your
My
mom?
sister and brother. My
Oh.
sister was 16 when my dad died.
And you were how old?
I was 6.
6. So
And
they,
Joe was 10 and I was 6.
okay, and your sister she's still around or no, she died?
Oh no, she died.
Yeah,
Serbic, Mary Serbic, Serbic.
And my mother had 2 sisters. And they both here were in America, Mrs. Venice, and my Aunt Martha that died in 99. And they had children.
yeah. So your brother and your sister looked after you, so to speak.
Well, no, my sister went to work at 16. She used to work at the Nestle's candy factory.
So who looked after you during the daytime?
My brother and I would come home from school. The only one that was up the street was my Aunt Martha, but they both work, and the only time that I went to them was my Aunt Martha used to put a bow in my hair to run to school, and then I'd go to school with my brother, because he was in the same school. as
Were
she
there other
was.
people in the area who looked after you too?
What?
Were there other people in the area who looked after you too?
Yes, there was an Irish family.
Spanish, no, Portuguese, in your house.
Oh, no, she didn't take care of me.
Oh, what?
The one that took care of me was Mrs. O'Brien's family. And she was,
Mom wants you to know.
Go.
I understand. Go, okay. Yeah. Go.
so I had met this Gertrude O'Brien in school.
Yeah.
And one day she asked me to come home for lunch with her. So I went home, and then that's how the grandmother, there was 11 people that used to come home for lunch in their family.
11 on the O'Briens.
There were 5 in the family, then they had 5 children, mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, 2 aunts,
Yeah.
and there was, and myself, and an adopted boy. There was 11 of us that used to come home for lunch.
Yeah.
And the grandmother used to make, you knew what you were gonna have every day. It was either corned beef Monday, hot dogs
Right.
Tuesday, hamburger Thursday, you know.
This is meat of some sort.
Oh, it's wonderful, and she never went to the store. She never went to the store.
And that was
The
delivered?
store came to her.
Delivered, okay.
Yeah. They would come with the meat, they would come with the vegetables, they would come with the donuts in the morning. So that she said, well, she knew my mother was a widow, when my mother became a widow. And she said, from now on, you will come here to lunch, not go home. So my mother met her and she said, I don't want you to have that child go home every day. And sometimes my brother, you know, would beat me up if he wanted lemon pie for lunch or jelly corned beef, and that's all we ate was when I'd go home with him. So my mother would try to pay her. She would not pay her red cent. No way. She said, if you're gonna pay me, then she can't come. And I went there, well, almost all of my grammar school, plus 2 years of high school, because I skipped a grade, so then Gertrude and I weren't the same. She was always one grade behind me because I skipped the grade. And, but they were wonderful people. They were wonderful to me. My mother, you know, you would supply her at Christmas with the house dresses and
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
So, but never, she would never take it on. And if I'd have a fight with Gertrude or something, and Gertrude would come home alone, the grandmother would have a conniption fit. She'd say, don't you come home unless Alan comes with you. So, but they were very good to me, very, very good. And then, of course, after school, we always came home, my brother and I, and lived very dangerously in the wintertime because my mother always thought whether the house would be standing when we'd come home, because my brother would put paper and wood in there and then pour kerosene on it in order for the coal to burn.
Right.
But thank God, nothing ever happened. He used it.
He was a good mechanic, he knew where he was.
So then when my dad died,
Yeah.
we only had this kitchen stove, you know, that provided the heat.
Yeah.
The house was nice. There was nothing wrong with the house.
So it was cold.
But it was cold as dickens. But I said to my mother when my dad died, no, not when my dad died, when was it that, oh, I know. After my dad was dead for many years, I was grown up already, my mother says, you know what, we ought to put up a tombstone for Papa. And I said, well, that tombstone is not going to warm Papa up in any way. We're going to put in a furnace downstairs so we can have some heat in this house.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We gathered enough money to get a furnace, and boy, was that a joy.
Yeah.
The only thing is that we used to have to go down and
Stoke this, was it cold?
stoke it and put the coal on, but oh, that was a pleasure compared to a coal house.
Yeah.
But we had fun. We had fun. My mother was very, you know, she knew how to do things. She used to sew a lot for other people, make dresses, and
That's
send.
where you learned to sew too?
Yeah,
She taught you?
yeah.
Yeah.
And Saturday nights was always my big night. About 9 o'clock, my mother would still be sewing. We got nothing for Sunday. And she'd send me to the store. And I knew where the store was. We had a Lithuanian grocer there, so I would go. She'd tell me what to get. And if she gave me $5, she'd never get me change. Because I spent every bit of that $5. And I had a little red card that I liked home. Every piece of fruit that I could get, and bread, and chicken. We always had chicken every Sunday, and I would like that home. And sometimes Joe would come with me, and we'd like that little thing home. But my mother would say, no change. No, you know, I bought this and that. The
Right,
other
that's
thing.
good, yeah.
I think that's when the chicken price went up.
Yeah, right. But we had chicken every single Sunday. That was,
Chicken
It
was
was
office tradition.
yeah.
Yeah.
But even when I grew up, if we had something else, we still had a chicken, because that lasted us all week. You know, we had chicken salad, chicken fricassee, anything that chicken could make. But
So your mom died of, you think of lung cancer?
my mom died of lung cancer. That
She
was,
died in North Haven.
and she
Yeah,
died
she moved
with
in
us.
with you for a while, yeah.
And she lived with us exactly a year.
And that's when your dog, after your mom died, your dog ran away and,
Well, I don't know if they dispute me on that. I know it's true. But anyway, she died and left our place in very beautiful shape. There wasn't a leaf on the ground when my mother would go out
She's
early in
busy
the morning.
raking.
Oh, she raked everything up and picked up. She didn't have anything to rake anymore because she'd go out and pick up the leaves by hand already. And had a
You're not here,
beautiful
I
garden,
keep you busy.
and chickens.
Yeah.
And then when she was dying, she had one chicken left. And this chicken used to lay those little tiny eggs, you know, what did they call those? Peewee eggs or something? And we'd take those to us and take it to the hospital
Yeah.
so that they would make those eggs for her. And another thing, she had a very good doctor. He was in cancer department, and I never, you know, I didn't expect that. She used to cough, and she she went to my obstetrician, and she said, I don't like what I hear in your mother's lungs.
Yeah.
And all